Welcome back, everyone, to theCUBE's live coverage here at RSAC. Day 4 is 2025. It's our 9th year covering RSA with theCUBE, our 15th year, SiliconANGLE and team. Again, the changing market, it's an incredible change, incredible rapid acceleration, agentic AI, really a forcing function. The game is still the same, protect the organizations from the bad guys. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE with Jackie McGuire. Doing our RSA summary, we had Dave Vellante, John Olson, our entire team, SiliconANGLE getting the news. Jackie, great to see you. Day 4 kickoff, you look great as usual.
Thank you, home stretch.
You ready for the color commentary?
I am here for the color. I feel like that is my purpose in life, is to bring the color.
It's been really great to have your analysis all week, so thank you so much for coming in on theCUBE, and I know you've been out on the ground, on the show floor, out at the events, a little karaoke, a little bit of a concert, a little music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the business, it's not Black Hat. Black Hat's more the festival of the teams. This is a little business vibe.
Yeah.
And it's been really good because you got the classic show, and then there's a lot of action off the floor.
Yeah.
Meaning in the hallways, at dinners, at the parties. I mean, there's a party fest here. It is a festival. So
it was fantastic.
What is your takeaway? What is your impression? What's your vibe? What's the experience of RSA this year? How would you like sum up the RSA as we look at day 4 here?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting kind of, lots of conflicting things. So we were just talking, I talked to many vendors who've actually scaled back their presence on the floor, smaller booths, less things on the actual show floor, because that thing is like a half-mile wide, it's really hard to compete with that noise. And so because we're seeing shifting demographics and buying patterns, what we're seeing is a lot of vendors trying to do more after-hours things, more intimate sessions with their customers, and so kind of investing in, to your point, the whole ecosystem around RSAC, and kind of trying to create more experiences for their customers and their vendors.
And the theme of RSA this year is many voices, one community. I know you and I were talking before we came on, day 4, about what that actually means. It was a great wrap session on this. But the vendor consolidation, the re-platformization is real. We're seeing that, and we're seeing Palo Alto. We've had CrowdStrike on. We had Zscaler, all the top leaders. We had 3 billionaires on, and they walking around with no security. So like, the security vibe is strong. But when you look at that, do we need all these booths? I mean, like in the old days, was you go figure out who's got what, but everyone has everything. And John Olson and some of the CISOs that came on was saying the big enterprises have everything.
Yeah.
They don't want to get rid of anything, and then the growing security threats, so you have this re-platformization or vendor consolidation is a real pressure point. Does that change the nature of the show, the relationship of the practitioners who are trying to source the best stuff while dealing with what they got and the new? I mean, what's your take on that relative to the consolidation, the show?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that I think vendors could do better on the show floor. So I spent the last 2.5 years at a vendor working the show floor for Cribble, and what I found is that a lot of the people coming into the booth are not our buyers, right? They're looking for a job, they're looking for a t-shirt. So yeah, I think a lot of vendors are kind of trying to come to terms with that, with the fact that the ROI on the booths may not be quite what they want it to be. And with that, because I talk all the time about enterprise wallet is shifting to millennials right now, and we were just saying millennials buy vibes, they buy experiences, and so if you can't produce a whiz type experience on the show floor and you're expecting to just put some tchotchkes out and have people come in, you're really not going to get the best ROI on your investment in your booth. And so we're seeing, and I think we're talking about platformization. So security has become absolute alphabet soup, right? Every analyst wants to make a career by inventing a new acronym. Every company wants to make, every product marketer wants to make a career by inventing a new product category. And so we just had this massive fragmentation. And so there's even just thinking about identity, there's 400 acronyms in identity. And so we have a lot of the bigger players, the CrowdStrikes, the Palo Altos, the Splunk and Ciscos, they're saying, platformization, we're going to become this kind of catch-all platform. In practice on the show floor and meeting with vendors, that's not what I think is actually happening. I think we're just consolidating those alphabet soups into specific platforms. So the IAM, the PAM, all of the identity will become an identity platform. The data security, DSPM, all of that will become a data platform. And so we are seeing platformization. I just don't think it's quite the one login to rule them all that the big vendors would have you believe.
I call it the re-platformization, because some people are re-platforming, some are actually adopting platforms for the first time because they had best of breed. And the theme is homogeneous layers where you need data, and people use you in the Waymo example, where you have so much data and devices or things connected that you need to have data controls, right? That's become a big theme. So there's clearly lines of sight on that, but then you go, okay, we live in a heterogeneous world. So it seems like it's a very big transition around, okay, philosophy, okay, and then what reality?
Yeah. Well,
how do I swap out all this stuff, and then where's that data? And so it's a real challenge.
Well, and cynically, a lot of the bigger vendors, they're working on the front end integration and kind of this layer, this normalization layer. But on the back end, a lot of these vendors who have grown by acquisition, it's still a mess. Like an IP is not called the same thing in one of their platforms as the other. So while to the customer it may look like that, when a lot of these large vendors sell 90, 95, 99% through the channel and really rely on integration partners and go-to-market partners, they need to be investing on the back end too. So I think a lot of the younger upstart vendors who've been around for 4 or 5 years are going to eat these legacy vendors lunch if they can't get both the front end and the back end platformed.
The integrations are going to be with AI, could be assistant there. Once I want to get your thoughts on something, because I know you got a lot of research coverage areas that you're digging in deeply on. But what I love about theCUBE is we get a lot of horizontal observation data from all the guests that come through. I paid particular attention this year to 2 guests because they're founders. Nir Zook, founder of Palo Alto Networks, and also Jay Chaudhry, because they're still the founders in charge of their companies. And so I kind of, a couple data points I wanted you to react to. Nir Zook was like, look at network security, firewalls, cloud was coming. They ran to the cloud, they saw that first, no one else saw it. Everyone's like, they poo-pooed the cloud because that's where their money is. I mean, network security. So he made the point that that stuff kind of went away. Jay Chaudhry's like, look at, we're network oriented. They have a network approach, but there's transit. They move into the data layer with their kind of switchboard, he calls it. So 2 founders, and founders have the ability to kind of smell the future and sense the opportunity. That gives me kind of directional vibes on, okay, Palo Alto's running at the new thing. SOC was a huge conversation there, that's well known. And then Palo Alto just saying, we're going to control data end to end, a whole nother thinking. So what is your reaction to that? What does that tell us? Does that tell us does that give us an end user view of the re-platforming? Because if you buy Nir Zook's argument, it's classic cannibalization argument. They're going to cannibalize their own before they go out of business like everyone else he referenced. That's the Nir Zook observation. And then Jay Chaudhry's just like, this is the best way to take end-to-end zero trust. I mean, so 2 simple concepts.
So it's interesting you bring that up. I was actually talking to someone who went from one of those large vendors to one of the smaller new unicorns. And she was saying that that was one of the biggest kind of existential crises that happened within that vendor, is the migration to cloud, but you still had these really, really deeply embedded physical network people who were convinced that the best place to handle security was at the physical network. And then 2020 happens, right? And you just have no choice but to move to the cloud because your employees can't come to the office. And so I think it has been, what you find in these big companies is that a lot of times the different groups aren't aligned, right? And so you guys have revenue rolling up to different business units, and it does create a lot of conflict. And so I do think that there is a lot of value in security at the network layer, but these legacy vendors are having to come to terms with how do you create a hybrid network between on-premise, and I actually think there's going to be a move back on-premise and cloud. How do you create a uniform experience between a virtual firewall, a hardware firewall, a virtual VPN? I used to have a Cisco hardware VPN. And I think the question is, how do you unify those experiences? And that's the kind of platformization they're talking about, I think. And that's where I think there is use for it. I think Cisco had the AI pods they announced, which are kind of like the pods on the network layer. So we are going to need more security at that layer. And I do think a lot of sensitive companies will bring, especially things like LLM training back on-prem, because it's so expensive to do in the cloud. So yeah, we're going to continue to see this push and pull, but I actually don't think that physical network security is going to go away as quick as we think it is, because I don't think the cloud is the best place to do a lot of super heavy machine learning lifting.
You know, it's interesting about security is it's crossing over other sectors. I was even brought this up with, I think Nir Zook, when I said, you know, physical AI like robotics, which is going to impact manufacturing. I know it was with Google and one of the other guests, I think it was Accenture and PwC. Physical AI kind of points to, okay, who's running the robots? What's the data security on that?
Yeah.
Because now you got Tesla and these self-driving cars, all these things are embedded. So it brings up the whole question of, okay, there's other tell signs that are outside the security industry that are going to impact some of these kind of architectural discussions. What are your thoughts on that? Are there things that we should look at that are kind of outside? I won't say the security bubble, because it's really not a bubble, because I think it's the most active. I think security is, the most active vertical that will shape AI. But there are AI forces coming in.
Yeah.
Like, how do you deal with robotics?
Yeah, and you know, I think that everything is a security issue now. And it used to be that you had a computer at your office and then you had a different desktop at your house, and now everything is security. So Waymo, you mentioned Waymo and like the automated driving. You know, we're in a Waymo the other day, and I was telling them, you know, I remember hearing a statistic like a year or two ago that 85% of Waymo rides had some type of human intervention. So they're not actually autonomous, they're remote controlled, which is the difference, right? And so, but yes, thinking about the amount of data that has to flow back and forth and what could go really, really wrong if you breach that data stream. You know, you could make, and we're actually seeing this. So around the Baltic Sea, Russia, it's been attributed to Russia, they've been messing with the GPS of delivery trucks. So, you know, Amazon Prime trucks, all their trucks have GPS and they know exactly where to go. And they've been scrambling the GPS, sending them in the wrong places. We've also seen them interfering with aircraft radar and causing false turf alerts, which means you're about to crash into the ground, and causing pilots to yank and pull up way too fast when they aren't anywhere near the ground. So everything is now a security issue, and the fact that almost our entire critical infrastructure, from power to water to everything, is now reliant on cybersecurity, and those are all becoming the highest targets for nation state actors. So there's a real
surface area is extended to beyond the surface.
It's everything. I mean, you're talking about
airplanes, they're in the air.
Yeah.
The air interface is an interface threat.
Yeah, well, and I think, like, I hate to be cynical, but the extent to which you're being monitored every day, you have no idea. Almost all the large retailers have these crazy Bluetooth triangulations that follow you through the store, look at what you pick up and put down, like figure out, you know, there are even some stores now that have LCD prices, and they're changing prices dynamically throughout the day based on what they know. So that stuff is all security too, and now you have these retailers, so if you've developed one of these crazy surveillance and dynamic pricing models, that is your IP, right? And that is the thing you have to really maintain. And I think we talked about this yesterday. The nature of the types of things you have to protect is fundamentally changing. It's not just your API keys. It's things that you can extract from AI, things you can extract from a lot of different things. And yeah, it's a wild world.
I want to get into the whole humanity piece in a second, but I do want to ask you about the CUBE research. John Olsik came on early. You were on multiple segments with us. You and John are teaming up, covering this area. One, talk about the areas that interest you guys. What are you guys talking about? What's the thesis? Can you share kind of what you're looking at? And then what did you guys find out here? Yeah. And what's the puzzle pieces you're putting together? Share the mission of what you guys are focused on so folks can know what to engage you guys on.
Yeah, so I think John has the benefit of having, you know, roughly a couple decades as a security analyst. So I think John brings the really, really good, like, deep background of, we've been through these transitions before. So interestingly, studies show that Gen Xers are dealing with AI better than millennials, because we've been through the PC revolution, the internet revolution. We've had 4 different things that were going to take all of our jobs.
We've had the most change of all generations, because we were cell phones, pre-iPhone, pre-Google, pre-internet.
I sold the first camera phone at Radio Shack. Like, it was a Sanyo flip phone that you clipped a camera to the bottom of. Yeah, and makes me feel old, but so
we're versatile. The X generation is versatile. Gen Z, millennials and Gen Zs, they're native.
Yeah.
They have, again, back to vibes and experience. So now you have a cross melting pot. Okay, so what does that mean for what you guys cover? I mean, what does that mean?
So I think for coverage, and we saw this when John and I are in a meeting, right? And he sits down, he gets right to business, and he's asking technical questions and stuff. Where I'm trying to get a feel for like, how do you understand your audience? How do you understand the way people buy? What are the actual conversations you're having with your CISO like? Because while I love living in the future as an analyst, having sat on the vendor side, I'm like, I need to know how to read the market right now. And so I think that, John is really focused on kind of the evolution of hardware and software and where that's going and kind of how companies are using it. And he really likes to cut through the BS and the marketing terms.
For sure.
And he asks the really hard questions where I think I'm an elder millennial. I'm trying to feel the vibes. And it's not that I'm not super interested in the IP and the tech and how it's used, but 40% of SIM stand-ups fail. That is insane. If you think about the fact that almost half of the time people try to deploy a new SIM, it doesn't go right, that I'm trying to figure out why that's happening. Because you could have the best technology in the world, and if your customers can't make it work, it doesn't matter. So I think I'm more focused on...
You're a vibe analyst.
Yes, I'm a vibe analyst.
No, vibe coding is, I mean, John also had a great kind of comment on his article he wrote going into the show. Vibe, and of course, vibe coding. It was a tongue-in-cheek, clever comment, but he wasn't joking 100%.
Yeah.
Vibe coding is actually very working, it's very generational too. And now you got like you mentioned, I think there's a vibe marketing, there's a vibe analyst relations angle, there's a vibe psychology, because people are now connected, and we talk about the digital twins here at theCUBE all the time, but like when you go look at a customer, the challenges that they have, there's the psychology of their mind, the craft is coming back because of agentic is going to be augmenting the human intelligence. So you have this like,
you almost have to run two separate marketing programs.
Vibe is legit in the sense of understanding context.
Yeah, well, and the thing I think is that, the Moore's Law, right? The rate of change in technology has gotten exponential. And so there were, like through the 90s, early 2000s, even the 2010s, technology changed, but it wasn't AI. And just because of the rate of change, I think that the level at which you have to keep up with what's happening, you almost can't ignore vibes, because that's what's driving buying decisions right now. And so I think historically we've been very focused on the tell, the info sheets, the lists of features, the stats, the how many bits per second. And now it's really the show. It's like, well, what's the end result? Because a CISO can't possibly understand the technical details of everything that's in security now. So they really need it distilled into like, what can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday? How is this going to save me headcount? And how the hell do I sell this to my CFO and CEO? So
I think the vibe thing is legit, and I'll tell you why. Because teamwork is everything. It's kind of a cliche in my standpoint, but it's really a fact. It's a shared economy, shared responsibility,
shared
teamwork.
fate.
Everything in security has always been sharing, intelligence, everything's teamwork oriented, so vibes matter. Good vibrations, good vibes on theCUBE, of course, but I think that tells to the cultural shift, and everything about this show to me speaks to the cultural shift we're seeing, because it's not just the security vertical of the industry. Security is everything. And if you look at AI being permeated into the horizontal aspects of every capability, which security has been for many, many years, almost a decade.
Yeah.
AI and security, because as data is involved, will be a fact.
Yeah.
It's not a department.
Yeah, well, and I think, the vibes thing, it's easy to roll your eyes at, but Common, who's a phenomenal artist and public speaker, he did the opening keynote. And the theme, as you said, is many voices, one community. And I always tell people that security is the place that renews my faith in humanity. Because when you get into a room with some of the really elite security people, they come from everywhere, right? They come from super tight-laced military. They come from the kids who look like me in the basements who play World of Warcraft. But at the end of the day, we all come together with shared fate and shared objective. And what he said in his opening keynote that kind of choked me up a little bit is that community doesn't mean that we all look the same or we all share the same things. It means that we all hold space for each other and we feel safe being ourselves with each other. And my friend Joe Hall put it, I think as best as I've heard it, in security we fly so close to the sun. Yeah. We do. We see the things people don't see. It's really hard not to go to bed with anxiety when you work in security. And one of the things that drew me to theCUBE was that you create community. Yeah. And I'm so happy to be the person helping us get more deeply embedded in security, because that is the thing that keeps security running, is the community we have, the shared fate, the shared objective, and really the focus on what is the result we want at the end of the day. And I think you'd mentioned G2 came on and he said, yeah, all these vendors are competitors, but our biggest competitor is the adversary. And I feel like in security, we really understand that, and we really, really put that to work.
That's awesome. And G2 Patel's head of product, so he's got a great cultural mindset too.
Yeah.
He believes in that same ethos. Humanity is at the doorstep of war or peace. We're at a global economy, and I think it's going to be a next challenging 5 to 10 years. I think the next 3 are going to really set the table. If you're watching theCUBE, of course, we got all the good vibes and good experiences happening here. We're going to bring you all the action. Jackie, thank you so much. Love that commentary. Of course, day 4 starting. Stay with us. I'm John Furrier, Jack McGuire, Dave Vellante, John Olsik, and the whole team. We'll be right back.